Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Work Hard, Invest Harder podcast. I'm your host, Justin Dixon. I'm super excited for this episode. Today, we've got Savannah on, and she is also called the Networth Nurse. She started her investing journey back in 2020 after having her second daughter. And she started investing passively and actively, actually, as she was a full-time nurse. She started investing in smaller deals, starting with like 12 units, before moving into larger value add deals and doing some more syndications. On this episode, we talk about strategies that hardworking W-2 employees can do to get started in their passive investing journey or to continue to build out their current portfolio. We also talk about one really important thing around how to do your due diligence on a deal operator or a sponsor so that you can feel comfortable investing your hard-earned money into a real estate deal. So without further ado, let's welcome in Savannah.
Do you love your job, but want other investment options than your company's 401k and trying to pick stocks? If so, you've come to the right place. In this podcast, you will get actionable information for your passive real estate investment journey. Welcome back to another episode of Work Hard, Invest Harder podcast. Here's your host, Justin Dixon.
All right. Welcome back to another episode of the Work Hard, Invest Harder podcast. Today I have Savannah, AKA the Networth Nurse, on the pod today. So Savannah, thank you for joining. And as we get jumping right into this, kind of give me a little bit of an overview of you and maybe introduce yourself to kind of the audience, and then we'll jump in.
Yeah, definitely. I'm super stoked to be here. A little bit of background about me and my story. So I'm a registered nurse. I really knew from a young age that I wanted to go into nursing. So did that right out of college. And once I got into the nursing specialty, I wanted to be in operations and administration. My goal was to become a CNO, Chief Nursing Officer, one day. And so started to climb the corporate ladder, went back to school, got my master's degree in nursing leadership and administration, and started doing all the things to kind of grow in the corporate world. And then fast forward to 2020, after having my second daughter, things started changing perspective. And my husband and I got really focused on building wealth in our own lives and really transitioning out of the W-2 world and started using real estate heavily to make that happen. And here we are today. I'm out of my W-2 and my husband's actually transitioning out of his W-2 in the next 7 days.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, my audience on the Work Hard, Invest Harder podcast is somebody that is in a W-2 job, right? And they, are traditionally investing their, money into 401k and maybe some stocks, but they kind of want to have other options, right? And, I was a W-2 employee and had no idea about the power of real estate and kind of what other options were out there other than kind of what, you're told in school, which is like 401ks and stocks and all of that. So, maybe give us a little bit of context around that pivot point, if there was an exact moment where you're like, this is like an aha moment, or kind of talk through kind of how that transition started away from, okay, I'm climbing this corporate ladder, I've got all this education and a very specific career, and now I want to transition and start investing my money and some of my time into real estate.
Yeah. And it came from a Google search initially, right? Like really learning how to build wealth. I didn't know anyone investing in real estate, had no idea anything about that. We had owned our primary home here in Los Angeles for a couple of years. And luckily that had appreciated over $100,000. And so once we got into this space and started educating ourselves on real estate investing and how powerful it was, and we were hooked, the next question was, okay, where do we find money to do this? And we didn't have any money to start investing in real estate. And so it took really listening to stories. I was binging all the podcasts and hearing how people were tapping into capital in different areas in their life. Old 401ks, you can tap into home equity. I didn't even know this at the time, but we ended up leveraging some of the equity in our primary residence here in LA to purchase our first investment property. And then after that, we slowly just started scaling, looking at different strategies and evaluating different methods out there in real estate to build wealth.
And when you kind of started that transition, obviously, it sounds like you were married, and sometimes there needs to be a joint effort or a common target of kind of what you guys were going after. My wife and I had kind of an aha moment where I read Rich Dad Poor Dad on my walk to work, and I was like instantly like transition moment, right? And then my wife was going to be as, triggered as I was, and luckily she was, and that kind of started us down our journey. So how does that work if maybe, you started listening to podcasts or started learning about real estate? Did you have to like convince your husband, or was it like, hey, this is like, we are going on the same path at the same time?
Yeah, I discovered it first because I was on maternity leave. So I had a lot more time. I was at home researching. I was taking my baby on walks around the park, and I was just listening to all the podcasts, Bigger Pockets, everything for hours. And mine was reading the Yellow Book by Michael Blank, Financial Freedom Through Real Estate Investing. And that was our aha moment, reading that book and realizing how powerful, especially group investing is through real estate syndications, which we had never heard of at the time. And the concept of partnering with other people felt like we were mitigating a lot of risk from going out and doing it on our own. And so once we read that and started looking at that, my husband was definitely on board even from the beginning. It just took longer to catch up because he was at work. He wasn't at home. But it was just me slowly sending him a good podcast I listened to with a story that seemed applicable to our lives and what we were doing. And that's why I make it a point to guest on podcasts, because they were so powerful for me in my initial journey. It was hearing the hundreds of stories from other people from all walks of life, going out there and making real estate investing work for them to build wealth, to create this in their lives. And it made me realize we could do it too.
Yeah. And, there are, as you start to kind of peel back the onion of the real estate investing world, you can go down a lot of different paths: single family, multifamily, syndication, storage. How did you pick, or did you kind of do a scatter shot, or maybe talk about what your first investment was?
Yeah. For us, it was the BRRRR method initially, because we didn't have a lot of capital to start, and we were trying to think of ways that we could take a fixed amount of capital, use it in real estate to really kind of grow wealth. And for anyone who's not familiar with the BRRRR method, it's buy, renovate. Oh, I don't know.
Refinance, rent, refinance, repeat, something like that.
Yeah. Yes. It's been a while since I read that one, but so going out with a fixed amount of capital, putting it to work for you, refinancing to pull out all the initial capital that you threw in the deal, and repeating the method so you could grow wealth. So that was really kind of our strategy when we first started off. And then living in Los Angeles, California, we were looking at doing that across the country in a different market in Atlanta, Georgia, just because you can get a lot more for your money over there.
Yep.
And then we were looking at BRRRRing long distance across the country. And it really kind of became out of our comfort zone at that point, as our first investment getting started as two young daughters at this point at home under the age of 2, both working full-time jobs. Overseeing a renovation across the country was really out of our comfort zone. And so we ended up purchasing new build townhomes in Atlanta, Georgia. And they did well. We have since sold them because they appreciated so well over the last couple of years that it made sense for us to sell them at a profit. But since then, we have transitioned heavily into multifamily syndications, and that's our biggest specialty now.
Got it. And when you kind of were still working, sounds like you guys were taking more of an active approach, a more time-consuming approach to investing. Did you guys start investing passively in any other kind of syndications or any other offers that were out there? Or did you just kind of say, okay, I'm going to pivot and I'm going to do more of an active role?
Yeah. So honestly, we started looking into syndications because for us, it was like, oh, you can, for anyone who's not familiar with syndications, it's a group of investors coming together. A good chunk of the investors are putting up capital to passively invest in these deals, and they're partnering with active investors who are wanting to take a more active approach on these real estate transactions. And so we were looking into ways that we could passively invest in a real estate syndication, but a lot of them didn't have opportunities for unaccredited investors. And because we were unaccredited investors, we didn't know anyone in the space. We didn't even know we could get involved in this. And so for us, we started brainstorming on how we could do these ourselves. And so we actually went through a formal coaching program on how to structure these type of deals. Naturally, as we started getting interested in involved in real estate investing. And after we bought those single family homes, we started generating some interest from friends and family of like, oh, you guys are doing real estate. What does that look like? Can we kind of do it together? And we didn't even know it at the time, but this partnering together is really what syndications are. And so since we've had the opportunity to have a lot of our friends and family partner alongside us in these real estate deals, which has been so amazing, and also providing the opportunity to dozens of healthcare professionals has been great. But it has been a transition over the last couple of years and what strategy we've worked on.
Yeah, and that's so I want to dig into kind of obviously you have a niche, your name is Networth Nurse, obviously. And so, I've been following you on Instagram and some of the socials for a bit now. And so I guess talk to me a little bit about how you started to have conversations with people, in your, social network, whether the friends or family or colleagues, and started to get them interested in kind of investing with you, or how did you kind of start that kind of transition away from like, I'm a nurse and now I'm like a real estate professional?
Yeah, it has been a very interesting transition over the last couple of years. I just hit 10,000 followers on Instagram, and it's just crazy to think how that's grown and the amount of relationships and business partnerships that I've created from that social media platform. It's insane. I'm so thankful for it. But yeah, I mean, so for me, moving into syndications, if you're going out and doing your own deal as a general partner on these deals, one of the roles is bringing in capital. And to do that, it's almost like a sales marketing thing. And me coming from the healthcare world, I was always kicking pharmaceutical reps and sales reps out of all the offices. And so to me, when it came time to start raising capital for real estate deals, I was very off put by it. I did not want to do it, did not want my face and name in front of everyone raising capital for these real estate deals, which I've really come 180 from that, to be honest.
Right.
But it was more, my husband and I coming together and getting clear on what kind of goals we wanted to do. So we sat down and we're like, 3 years from now, we want our life to look like this. This is how many deals we need to have done and how much money we need to be bringing in on a monthly basis to get to that goal. And how many deals do we need to be doing? How much capital do we need to raise? How many deals are we underwriting? And so we got very specific on our goals, and that really kind of outlined what steps we needed to make to get there. And so raising capital is a part of doing these real estate deals and building a business and building a brand and establishing trust, especially with your investors. And so for me, it was creating social media accounts and showcasing what I was doing as a nurse, as a mom, as an investor. And really since day one, before we even had our first deal, I've been showcasing my journey on social media for everyone to kind of follow along. And it's been great to see how it's evolved. And I mean, for instance, some of my family members, when we first started raising for these deals, were a little skeptical. Like, is this a pyramid scheme? Like, what are you doing? Like, what are the risks involved? And it's funny, like my grandparents, for example, they watched us do 3 deals before they jumped in on the 4th one. And it's cool now to see them jump in on the 4th one, but it definitely has evolved. But it's really come from transparency and just showcasing my journey and what I'm doing.
So one thing you talked about was you kind of sat down and kind of put pen to paper, so to speak, and kind of figured out, okay, we need to invest X amount of dollars or raise X amount of capital to generate Y amount of income, which will essentially replace maybe your salary or both your salaries, et cetera. So if you're, one thing I talk about with my investors and people that I meet is building, a lot of people talk about financial freedom, and I think that term is used a lot. I talk about a financial foundation, having that 6 months of income in the bank so that if you do lose your job or something happens, you have that safety net, but then also building these additional passive income streams so that, you're sitting in your W-2 job and, right now we're recording this in early February, a lot of tech employees are getting laid off. There's recession fears, interest rates are super high. But how did you guys start to think about the process of, okay, and put yourself maybe into W-2 shoes saying, I don't need to replace my salary. I like working. I like being an employee, but I'd love to have $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 of extra income because that'll help me afford sending my kids to a better college or going on a cooler vacation each year. Like maybe talk me through a little bit about, that process that you and your husband kind of sat down and, it's not an exact science, right? But, how did you kind of think through that?
Yeah. I mean, for us, it came down to the numbers. I mean, it almost is science with these investments because when you look at the deals and how your money can grow in a real estate syndication, I mean, on average, we're earning our investors 20% average annualized return. This is the number you want to compare to the stock market, which historically has done around 6%. When you compare the fact that you can put your money in an investment vehicle that's earning you 20% as opposed to 6, I mean, it'll do wonders for you. And looking at it of how it compounds even over a yearly basis. And in that book I mentioned earlier, it does a really good job of really showing you number wise what that looks like for your life, and taking a $50,000 investment and putting it in a real estate syndication. Like, what can that earn you? What does that look like? And comparing it to what investment strategies you have going on in your life right now. Like, what is your capital doing? Do you have $100,000 sitting in a savings account not doing anything? Would it make sense to put it into an investment vehicle that's now earning you money? And everyone's strategy and risk tolerance is very different. Everyone's financial foundation is very different. I mean, it depends on if you have kids and family and kind of what's going on there. But the cool thing about real estate syndications is it provides the passive opportunities for people. And I love being able to showcase this opportunity, especially to hardworking healthcare professionals who my audience is because they are, doctors, nurses doing backbreaking work, and the healthcare mindset, we think as nurses and doctors, is if we want to make more money, it's doing a double time, it's doing overtime, it's picking up extra shifts, it's working at I used to work 20-hour shifts when I was saving up to buy my home here in LA. Like, that's what you do as a healthcare professional.
Right, you just work harder.
Yes. And for me, it's like, look at the numbers. If you put this money into a real estate syndication, this is what it can do for your future. And for me, when it comes to talking points with healthcare professionals, it's always showing them the numbers.
Got it. No, that's super helpful. I have a really important question I want to ask you that will help some of our listeners get kind of active and kind of start listening. But we're going to take a quick sponsor break. So we'll be right back. Keep listening.
Whether you're trying to hire a full-time employee or a contractor to fill a gap, Hire Tomorrow can help. Hire Tomorrow is a boutique recruitment firm that has successfully filled sales and marketing, human resources, and technology positions with companies ranging from startups to Fortune 500. If you're struggling to find the right talent, check out hiretomorrow.com or reach out to recruiting@hiretomorrow.com to see how they can help.
All right, welcome back. Want to jump into a question. As I mentioned before the break, I had a super important question to ask Savannah. And so if you're a W-2 worker and you maybe have started to listen to podcasts and you're starting to kind of get the bug about real estate, what is like a first or second step that you can give them, or a piece of advice that you could share that could start them down this passive real estate investing journey?
Yeah. So the first thing I always tell people is see how much time you want to commit to it. Do you want to be active or do you want to be passive? So if you're already knowing, okay, you got a cool W-2, you like it, you're putting in your hours there and you just want to take this money and put it passively into an investment, then at that point, you're vetting out different opportunities. So real estate syndications are an amazing opportunity for passive investors. If you're just getting familiar with it, it's really kind of learning the strategy and learning the operators. So at that point, you'll be passively investing with an operator who's out there doing the deal. And you'll need, I always tell investors to look at the track record, see kind of what deals they've done, who are they partnering with, because in the syndication space, it's a team sport. It's usually not one-on-one deals that you're doing. There's a good amount of people involved. So always looking at the team and then looking at the business strategy. So we do heavy value add deals. So we're looking for mismanaged multifamily deals, and we're going in there and forcing appreciation by taking care of repairs and maintenance that has been off put for a long time, and using that now to push rents and adding additional income streams to the property, like laundry or parking or pet fees. So there's a lot of different ways. We do value add deals, so it's forcing appreciation. And with that, you have a lot more control over the deal. And there's a lot of different ways that you can mitigate risk in real estate. So if you're thinking about doing it, I would start seeking out some of those options.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. And one of the things I always tell people is you have to vet because if you want to be passive, you're not going to have the knowledge necessarily to really do the underwriting, right? So you're going to need to rely on people like us that are looking at deals or bringing deals to them. So you have to really dig into the due diligence on the person that you're putting your money in, because you're hoping that they have done their due diligence on the people that are actually operating the deal, right? So if you're raising capital, for a multifamily deal, you may not be the operator, you may be working with an operator. So you have to kind of do that due diligence. So I guess you talked about track record or any other things that if you're a first-time passive investor, things you should ask an operator, a capital raiser, or investor relations person to kind of feel more comfortable, putting, because we're asking people to give $50,000, $100,000, $200,000 to these deals. So it's not like, 10, $20.
Yeah. Besides track record, business model, and then also usually kind of for first-time investors, and I have a lot of healthcare professionals who aren't really knowledgeable about real estate before they start investing in their first syndication. So for me, it's always educating them about the returns. So what do the returns look like? What is a ROI, return on investment? What is AAR, average annualized return? What is cash flow? And then using those numbers, looking at the definition, seeing how they're calculated, and then comparing them to other investments. So for example, our real estate deals, we aim for 100% ROI for our investors. So if they're investing $50,000, they're going to get $50,000 back plus another $50,000 on top of that. So using that now to compare it to your retirement accounts, your 401k, your 403, other investments that you have, maybe stocks, bonds, gold, once you understand the foundational return metrics, then you can make better educated decisions and compare different investments, which I think is helpful.
Got it. What's something that you're like looking at? We're in kind of early 2023, high interest rate, people talk about recessions, people losing jobs, et cetera. What are you working on now? What is your outlook for 23? Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, we just closed on a 556 storage unit deal a couple of weeks ago. We got seller financing for that one, so that was great. It is in Arizona. We're looking at other multifamily deals. We love value add multifamily deals, but in terms of kind of what I'm focusing on, I'm actually building a startup that's kind of revolved around financial wellness for healthcare professionals, because exactly like you mentioned, the financial foundation is always first. And I found throughout Networth Nurse and capital raising that a lot of the conversations I was having with healthcare professionals, they really weren't at the point of being able to invest yet because they didn't have an emergency fund. They weren't paying off their student loans yet. They really weren't there yet. And so I've really kind of used a lot of that market research and customer surveys to go back and build this financial wellness product. So that's really where the majority of my time and energy is focused at this point. But we're looking to do another 2 or 3 deals by the end of the year for our investors.
Got it. And how do you kind of attract investors? Are you going out and doing more kind of broad campaigns and trying to build your investor pool as big as possible? Or are you taking a more kind of individualized approach and more personal approach?
Man, I have gotten investors so many different ways. It's so crazy. Even in the hospital, caring for patients, I just openly talk about real estate, and I've had a patient's grandson who's invested over $200,000 with me just randomly. So I'm always on fire about real estate and just talking about it with anyone. And so that's really kind of how I attract a lot of capital. Coming out and doing podcasts, sharing my story with people. Social media has been huge in terms of just allowing people to get to know me, because one of the biggest hurdles to raising capital is trust. Your investors need to know that they can trust you as a person and what you're going to be doing with $50,000, $100,000. It's a good chunk of their money, and they want to know that they can trust you. So being super transparent with everything I do on social media is a huge effort towards my capital raising. And now it's gotten to the point that I've done it for the last couple of years that we get a large amount of repeat investors and referrals as well. So we're kind of hitting that snowball tipping point. But a lot of the marketing is kind of organic.
Yeah. And so we talked a little bit about your first deal and some of the things you've done early, I guess. Maybe can you share some lessons learned, maybe a deal that didn't go exactly as planned, whether you found it or kind of you were invested in it? I'm just always kind of curious kind of how you kind of weathered that storm, and kind of came out of it with kind of learnings.
Weathering storms in real estate is a thing. We now, because we've gone through 5 deals now, we brace ourselves for the hurdles of things go wrong all the time. And so you just really have to prepare yourself for being able to be a problem solver. And so even in our first deal that we did, it was a small deal, a 12 unit. We were only raising like $300,000. I think we ended up raising less, like 250,000, but we're showed this deal by a broker. We were told that we could turn a storage unit into a studio apartment. And that would really, I mean, adding $700, $800 a month really skyrockets the NOI in multifamily real estate. So the net operating income, multifamily real estate functions differently than single family homes in that the value of multifamily real estate is based upon how much income the building has generated. So it's treated more as a business, whereas single family homes, the value of a home is based solely on the market comp. So it's based on your neighborhood and different things that it's a little bit harder to control, where multifamily, you can control the value of it by forcing appreciation into the deal. So when you get told that you can turn in a storage unit into units where you're generating more income, there's a huge opportunity there. And so we were going through the motion. We got an engineer to look at it. He drew us up plans. We vetted it out with him. We confirmed like multiple times, like, hey, we need to make sure we can do this because our investors are relying on this for the returns.
Right. This is pretty critical to the actual business plan here.
And they're like, yes, and then we get there, we get the building, we own it. And then they go there to start doing the work and pulled permits from the city. And we could not add an additional studio unit to that building. I could not believe it. I still remember where I was in the hospital when I got that email and just my stomach dropped. My father-in-law's in this deal with me, one of my good nursing friends, like my aunt. And it was just like, I couldn't believe it. Like we paid $30,000 for a coaching program. Like we felt like we did everything we could to prevent a huge mistake like this from happening. But my husband and I were very much of like, okay, you can't sit there and dwell in it. No blame game. Like for us, it was just like, all right, how do we fix this? What do we do next? And we ended up turning that storage space, renovated it a bit. It cost a fraction of what we were going to pay on the studio, and then rented out. We divided it into 7 storage units, $70 each. So we're making $490 a month on that, which ended up doing better for our overall returns because the capital invested into it was $5,000 as opposed to $30,000. So we ended up recovering from that one, but it still stings a bit even to think about it.
But the cool thing about real estate is, obviously every deal looks great and you can make every deal look great on a spreadsheet, right? Because that's how we look at these things, is in Excel, right? And so obviously when you take over a deal, things are going to happen, good and bad. How do you communicate to your investors? Like, what's that protocol look like? Because I've been in deals as a passive investor and, I want to know, I'd rather know bad news than hear no news, right? I want to kind of know what's going on and what maybe is trying to be done to solve a problem. So obviously you guys had a big kind of theoretical problem in the beginning where you couldn't turn a storage unit into cash flowing units. Did you communicate that to your investors right away, or do you kind of have a solve for that problem before, making that, transition and that communication?
Yeah, definitely a solution before we present the problem to them. They want to know, just throwing that on someone's lap isn't really fair. As the operator of the deal, it's our responsibility to tell them, okay, this is a problem, but this is what we're going to do about it. Having a solution in mind before we communicate anything is key. But communication's huge for us. It's always been very big for me. Like I said, we have a lot of friends and family in the deal, so we make sure our communication's on point. So we do quarterly updates, distributions. My husband and I, Lupe, we hop on a video, we do a PowerPoint together, we talk through it, we send notes every quarter, and then we send additional updates in addition to that through our portal as well. But anything that goes on like that, evictions that happen throughout the quarter, we really try and save a lot of it for our quarterly updates. So a lot of them can have it all at once. But if there are one-offs and like updates, like we got a new roof or something, I'll send some pictures in our portal and kind of update them. It really kind of depends on what's going on. But in terms of transparency, we show every quarter, we give our investors full access to the P&L so they can see all the financials and what they're doing. And to be honest, I probably have less than like 5% of my investors even open this and look at it. But regardless, the communication is there.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. So as we transition kind of to the final section here, I've got kind of a 3-pack of questions that I'm going to ask everybody and have asked everybody. So we talked about this a little bit, but what's one piece of advice that you got to get you started or helped you kind of in your kind of real estate journey?
Networking. So my husband and I, we were kind of doing this together, and we felt like we didn't really need to be networking and going to events and generating partners, I guess. But we realized the more you do that, the more you network. What I've done with Networth Nurse and the relationships you build in the community, it puts you 10x. The ability that you have just through relationships, you can go a lot further.
Got it. So networking. What's your favorite real estate or business book that you're reading right now?
Oh my gosh. Brands Don't Win. I don't have the author, but
Okay.
I'm
Brands
loving
Don't
that.
Win. Got it. Fair enough. And so if you hit your financial freedom number, it sounds like you and your husband kind of have kind of mapped out kind of what that number may be, meaning you could live an amazing life just off of passive income. Like, what would you do?
Move to Hawaii and just hang out. I mean, I love building my startup, so I would keep doing that. I'm obsessed with it. I love the grind. I love solving problems and building things.
Awesome. Thank you for having me on the show. Where can people find you? We're going to put all your socials in the show notes, but what's kind of the best way to catch you?
Yeah, Networth Nurse, everything. So my website's networthnurse.co. Almost all my social media handles are the Networth Nurse or Networth Nurse. I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, all the things. So I love connecting with people. If you're interested in what we're doing, please reach out.
Awesome. No, thanks for being on the pod. It was really awesome catching up with you. So as we close out, I hope everybody took something away from this episode. I've got another one dropping soon, so keep listening. And just remember, you don't have to quit your career to build a passive real estate investment portfolio that will provide you multiple streams of passive income. You just need to take some action, and listening to this podcast is an awesome first step. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Awesome.
I hope you got value out of this episode of the Work Hard, Invest Harder podcast, your one-stop shop for education on how you can continue to work hard in your career and have different options to invest even harder. If you took anything away from this episode, please leave a written review. I read every review as it helps me serve you better. If you're listening to this podcast, it means that you want to grow your passive real estate portfolio. The easiest way to do that is to join our investor club by heading to greatventurecapital.com/invest. The link is in the show notes. See you on the next episode.